Nu är vi redo att börja köra på det agila spåret på dagens SAST-konferens. Jag heter Jonas Hermansson och kommer vara lite röst emellan de olika seminarierna. Och jag ska försöka fånga upp om ni har några frågor eller några funderingar eller någonting som ni skriver i chatten. Så att, var inte rädda att skriva saker i chatten, för vi ska försöka fånga upp det som är till. Först ut på vårt perfekta agila spår is Chris Hofstetter. Chris Hofstetter was actually my boss, so I'm a little bit afraid of what he's going to say, but actually he was one of my best bosses I ever had. So please welcome Chris Hofstetter and carry on.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jonas. And of course, it's not so interesting who's been whose boss, even though that's kind of some fun information. Really, I like to talk about who is inspiring who, and I've been very inspired by Jonas and everybody else I've worked with through the years. Fantastic to be here today. I'm going to start sharing my screen. And there you see the title of the presentation, and already now there's like a little bit of a subtle shift happening because it's called the bait and switch. I lured everybody in with the title, What Testers Should Be Learning from Designers. And now I switched the title to What We Should Be Learning from Designers. And what I really mean as we is everybody who's not already a designer today, of which testers are like a subset, right? And actually, I think even designers should be learning something from designers, but that's getting a little bit too abstract, a little bit too quick. Let's get going. See if I can control everything here. I'm going to start off the Agile track number 3 on this 2021 SAST conference with a quote. We all design things, but we are not all designers. It has been said, we all design things, but we are not all designers. What do we mean by this quote? We're going to start looking at what it means to design things, and I hope I'm going to get you all on board with the idea that we all design things. What does it mean that we're not all designers, even though we have to design things? It means that maybe we don't have the same toolbox that designers have, even though we have to design things. This is part of the reason why I'm talking today, and it's part of what I'm going to talk about. You may be wondering, where does this quote come from? Let's reveal the source. It comes from a SAST speaker, 2021. Let's move on. Okay, what is design? I'm thinking maybe we can all do our best to try to come to a conclusion. What is design? Being the first talker on this track today, I hope maybe I'm one of the first people to use Mentimeter at SAST 2021. You know the drill? You know how it works? Type in that code or scan that barcode and give me some ideas about what design is. I'll give you a few minutes to do that. Or a few seconds, we'll see how it goes. I haven't found the background button, the background music button. I could sing for you or make some noise out of my mouth, but we'll just take silence for now. All right, I'll start revealing what it is that you all are answering here. Just gonna find my way over to that. So there. Again, I'm the first speaker today on this track, so maybe I'm the first one to use Mentimeter. I'm not the first one to work for Mentimeter. That person's coming on the last talk today. Right, so we're getting some ideas of what design is. Of course, I'm going to come with my own definition in a little while, but I wanted you to think about it a little bit first. I'm seeing some themes, creativity, form, beauty, simplicity. seems to be the trend. And of course, the word cloud is continuing to develop there, but I'm feeling like let's start moving on. There is no single faucet. There's no single answer to this, but I'm anyways going to show my answer. For me, design is about creating. But there's a part that's maybe missing in this word cloud that we're creating, and that part is intention. There is always a purpose with our creations. I might want to make somebody feel something. I might want to make myself feel something by creating something. We always have a purpose. We always have an intention. And then we also have restrictions. It could be budget, or it could be the materials that we're using, or it could be the design system that we're using where we're restricted to certain forms and colors. So these are the key words that I'm choosing to lift up to describe design and set the stage for the rest of the talk today. My definition of design here is not very far away from another definition that I've been using in some of my other talks. This one is from Mike Montero at a previous From Business to Buttons conference. From Business to Buttons is a really big conference in Sweden within design and user experience. Mike's definition was the intentional solution to a problem within a set of constraints. So there you have the restriction, but you also have the intention. Right, so with that in mind, let's move on. And I'm counting on our moderators to have a look at the chat in case anything interesting pops up there. Design is not only UX, and it's not only about interacting with a screen. I'm now surrounded by designers. I work at a design bureau these days. And these are the types of things that the designers that I'm surrounded by talk about. Of course, you have the product design, and that's a lot of what we're working with our products and services, and interaction design, maybe even information. But it becomes a little bit bigger than that when we start talking about service design, how we design our organizations, our businesses, and maybe even the society, both on a local and a global level. So these are the types of things that we design as designers. But you might be thinking, but somebody said, we're all designers, or we all design things. What is it that we design as testers? I'm going to throw one more thing in here now, and you may recognize it. Test design. Has anybody heard of test design? I'm thinking about Jonas at this moment, and I remember Jonas. We've actually had course in this area. You could like spend several days learning how to design tests. But what is it that we do as testers? We are designing something. We are creating something. We have all of the material that we're using and the strategies that we're using and the people and the teams that we're using to do the test. And with the test, we have an intention. The intention is that we want to do some kind of a judgment of quality, some kind of active involvement in making sure that there is quality. And of course, we're restricted. I think something we all recognize is that we're restricted by time. So I just wanted to pull us all into how can we as testers think that we are also designing things. Move on. A little bit about myself. My name is Chris. I come from California. I am today part of In Use. That's the design bureau, which is part of AFRI. You may have come in contact with me previously as part of Consultbolag 1, where we had our trainings within requirements and test. These trainings have been absorbed into In Use now, In Use Academy, where we also have trainings within various aspects of design. And I'm responsible for like the whole package now. A little bit more on the personal front. I cohabitate with a number of living things, most of them female. The big fluffy dog there is a male. I love consuming music and look forward to doing it live again. And I also love reading. And so just a little bit of a snapshot, the 3 books that I'm reading right now, I started them a couple months ago and I'll finish them within the next couple months. I'm reading a book about working with our design in our organizations. I'm reading a book by Virginia Woolf called The Waves, because I've never read a book by Virginia Woolf, and I really like waves because I'm a surfer, or I used to be. And then I'm reading this book called This Life by a Swedish author, and it's more like hocus pocus. So that's a little bit about me. Let's move on. Oh yeah, these days, instead of doing the courses in the classroom, it looks more like this online. We've been doing that for over a year. So what is it that we should be learning from the design community? These are the things that I'm going to come with today. We're going to talk about maps. We're going to talk about the double diamond, a little bit about empathy, a prototyping mindset you might have heard of before, but I had to get that one on the agenda so that I can also talk about the first shitty draft. And just so that I can say that, because it's really fun to say. If we have time, we're going to talk about a tool or two that we could be learning about from the design community. Here, I'd like to do another little subtle shift in the title, though. What we should be learning, you could also think of this as what we should be borrowing, or maybe even what we should be stealing from the design community. All right, we've all heard about user-centered development or user-centered design. And if we want to get into that a little bit, you could think of this orange dot is our product or our service that we're working with. And the little person there, that's our user. And when we start thinking about user-centered design, of course, the user has to do some sort of effort in our systems. You can think of what it's like when you're reporting your time at the end of the week. That's the effort that you're doing as a user. And hopefully the value that you're getting back from that system or service is in balance with the effort that you're putting in. So that's just a little bit of an interesting aspect of user-centered design. I think we've all heard of user-centered design before. The next slide is something that I've proudly stolen from one of my colleagues on a course that we held together last month. And this was my colleague's definition of user-centered design. If you take a look at that, what my colleague from the design community wanted to talk about here is that we're building the right solution in the right way. Those of you that are certified or maybe try to get certified as a tester at one point, just quite didn't get there, you might start like getting the shakes at this point, because it should start reminding you of some words we talk about in the testing community that start with V. If anybody wants to guess at it, you can write in the chat. I can't see the chat, but I'm happy if you're there. So the right solution in the right way. That's what designers are talking about. Okay, let's look a little bit closer at this product or service that we're developing. And I like to think of quality. We all work with quality. So let's look at this from a quality perspective. And these are my words here. I like to think of quality as two main components that are symbiotic. The first one is that in quality, you have something that is fit for purpose. We're going to be able to do with it what we want to do with it. The other aspect of quality is that our systems should be robust. They shouldn't break. Even when you let testers at them, they shouldn't be breaking. That's the robust part. And both of these parts are important. And those two words that start with V, here they come. Fit for purpose, that's more about the problems that we're trying to solve. And when we talk from a testing perspective, that's when we talk about validation. And the robust aspect, and we're more focused on the solution, we're talking about verification. So I just wanted to show some similarities coming at the same problem from two different communities and two different perspectives, the design community and the more of the quality community. All right, so I'm going to talk about a number of things today. One of them is maps. So let's look at a number of maps that we could be learning about or stealing from the design community. I come from in-use, and when you end up on the in-use page, you see this right away, making impact. And it could seem like, oh, wow, you know, those guys are like, they're making impact. And then you might think, well, that's not so original because I'm also making impact, or at least I want to be making impact. So I'm wondering about something. Actually, I'll back up a moment here and I'll think like this. Is there anybody out there who is not interested in making positive impact? Please write me in the chat. Jonas, is there anybody not interested in making positive impact?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay. Because I've made a very basic assumption here, and it's that we're all interested in making positive impact. There may be one or two out there that are really interested in sabotaging things and just don't really dare to say that at the moment. But let's move on. So let's assume that I'm right. We all want to make positive impact. The next question is, do we experience true engagement at our work? We want to be making positive impact. That's what gives us our purpose. Purpose gives us engagement. Are we experiencing true engagement at our work? And here I thought, let's see if the answer is 100% or if it's a little bit less. So why don't we go back into that, the same Mentimeter that we were in before, and answer this quick question. Do you feel truly engaged in your work? There is no right or wrong answer to this question. You can look at what the other people are answering, and you can actually copy their answers if you want to, but really we want to know how you feel about this. Okay, I'm looking as the answers start rolling in here. At the moment, about a third of the people who have answered have answered no to the question, do you feel truly engaged in your work? And maybe the distribution will look a little bit different when everybody's done answering, but I was quite certain that, that we would have less than 100% feeling engaged in their work today. Remember, we all want to make positive impact. This leads me to believe that we maybe are all not certain that we're making positive impact, or maybe we don't see how we're doing it. So I want to go back to this topic of maps. First, I want to show you a result of a poll from Gallup. They're the people that you usually go to if you're going to do polls. And Gallup has quite recently done a poll where they've asked the question, do you feel engaged at work? And here are the findings for Western Europe. That's like us. And 10% of employees are engaged at work. It looks like the testing community, at least based on our own little poll, we have a little bit more positive result there. 10% of employees are engaged at work. 70% of employees are not engaged. That doesn't sound so good. And this 19% of employees are actively disengaged. Ooh, that sounds really scary. So I think we can make the conclusion that we could be better about making positive impact, or at least seeing that we're making positive impact. That's the next map that I'm going to talk about, right? So first I want to show this model. I promised to come with some models today where we tie things together, and the different things that we're going to tie together in this model are in the middle. We have that service or product that we're working with. On the left-hand side, we have the business, or maybe you work for a public agency, the organization that we're working for. And it's these organizations that are doing the investments in the products and services that we're developing. Then we have the users that come into the picture, and the users, once more, they want to be getting out some value. They need to be putting in some effort. And it's through the use of our products and services in the middle that we're actually achieving this impact. Impact for our users, impact for our customers, impact for society, or what it might be, right? This is a very simple yet powerful diagram that shows how you can't just be user-centric. You can't just be focused on a solution. You can't just be focused on a business. You need to get all of these parts together, and then you can really start showing how we're making impact. Right, so let's get down to the map. This is an impact map, Effektkarta, if we're talking Swedish. And it's not the idea that we're going to look at the details here. We're going to talk about the anatomy. What's an impact map? For the first thing, you can imagine that you have one sheet of paper, an A4, and that is the map. So on that map, on one A4, we want to have some very central, significant elements that we can all rally around so that we can feel like we're making a difference. In the middle, that's the impact part. That's where we're going to define a goal, one goal preferably, that we're all striving after. And it could be a fairly lofty goal, but it shouldn't be too abstract, because there's another thing that's required in this center circle, and that's that we need to also define how we're going to measure the goal. And it needs to be very concrete, how we measure whether we're actually making impact. Sounds very simple, but of course, just getting that part down involves lots of work with lots of stakeholders. The next ring, if you will, is the usage ring. And we have a number of profiles here, different user profiles. You can call them personas if you want to, but it's not really personas. It's different types of users that have different needs at different points in different contexts. And these are prioritized. So we have our usage layer, and then the next layer is solution. The idea with the impact map, though, is that we're really nailing the problem, and then we can get some ideas about a solution. Quite a powerful tool. You don't need to work according to any specific methodology, be it our own in-use methodology or somebody else's. If you don't work according to our methodology, my question is, what do you have that is the equivalent of this? When you get into your next assignment, where's the map? That's my question, and I think it should be your question. Let's move on. We're lifting up a little bit. We're talking not only about screens and interactions with a product, and now we're going to talk about service design for a moment. There's two key things that I want you to be taking with you from service design. It's the customer journey map and its touch points. So let's look at the anatomy of the customer journey map. The map itself is in Swedish, which is just as well. It's not the idea that we're going to be reading the map. I want to talk about the anatomy here as well. The map shows us a number of phases, both before, during, and after you have your specific interactions with a product. This really is your whole journey in an interaction with a brand or an agency, right? And you can have activities and steps, so that's a little bit more concrete. One of the main parts of the customer journey map is the user experience curve, which is showing both positive and negative what's happening with the user over this whole experience. This curve is also known as the touchy-feely curve. It's the emotional curve. Emotions are sometimes hard to measure. And this is not something that somebody just dreamed up and drew. There's a lot of research that goes into this. I'm going to talk about research later. In the customer journey map, you also have very specific needs for users at specific points on the journey. And then you have pain points, possibilities, etc. And all the way down, you have the touch points. And here I want to point out that touch points are not only a digital interaction through a screen. It could be also a physical interaction. So once again, touch points. Here are some ideas or some examples. The example on the top is from McKinsey. And there's a number of different touch points that McKinsey talks about. And in addition to, for example, a website, here you have the actual visit to the storefront. So it's physical as well as digital. It's more holistic. Here you have more from the design community. Another example, it's very similar. So even if you don't work with service design today and you don't have all of the tools that a service designer has, I think that we can start working with at least the equivalent of a very rough customer journey map and touch points. That's something I want you to take from today. And while we're on the subject of maps, let's throw in one more. We've probably heard about roadmaps before, and most of the time our roadmaps are feature-based. At least when we talk about them, we talk about the features that are coming over the next quarters or years. Why not shift towards more impact-driven roadmaps instead of just feature-driven roadmaps? It's just a slight shift. It's like same, but different, a very significant different. This is just an example of how you can work with this shift. And in this Excel matrix, we're now looking at the product backlog. So we're not looking at the roadmap per se, it's the product backlog. So you have all your items there. And in this area, we're giving some kind of evaluation of different aspects of value or impact. Saves time, organizes, simplifies, etc. That's the impact. And this is all very mathematical. We need the cost side of things as well. And there's different ways of doing this. Let's say planning poker in this example, and then you get some kind of a score and some kind of a ranking. Of course, we shouldn't be fully making our decisions based on numbers like this, empirical data. But this should be one of our sources in helping us to determine more how we can have impact-driven roadmaps instead of just feature-driven roadmaps, right? So another thing that you're getting from me today is a list of questions that you can come with at your next assignment. So here comes the first one. And this is a quote, but it's like a quote from you from this day forward. And I thought maybe, Jonas, this is the point where first I'm going to say the quote, and then you can repeat it after me, and then I'll feel like it's working. Does that sound okay, Jonas?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. So the next time you end up at your new assignment, first day on the assignment, and people are starting to talk about what it is that we're going to build and which technologies we're going to use, etc., I want you to say, "Show me the maps."
Show me the maps.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so the ball's rolling. Let's move on. The next thing I want to talk about is empathy. Empathy means you truly understand somebody else and have their perspective. Being user-centric without involving users. Just going to see if I can do something here. I am going to, let's see here. Stop share. There, yeah. Just to mix it up a little bit, I have intentionally stopped sharing my screen. And I want to talk about being user-centric without involving users. And this is something we could all feel sort of like guilty about because we do it sometimes. And I want to back up a little bit. If we think like 10 years ago, there weren't a lot of designers around us. There weren't a lot of UXers. But that doesn't mean that design wasn't important and UX wasn't important and being user-centered wasn't important. So who were the experts 10 years ago? It kind of was us, but we didn't have the tools for it. So we talked a lot about being user-centric, but we didn't have the tools. So I don't think we should have any guilt for like pretending like we knew how to really be user-centric when we didn't have designers and UXers. But now that we have them, let's start looking at the tools that they use and that we could be using. So back to the presentation. Yeah, this was what our toolbox looked like 10 years ago when we were talking about being like user-centered experts. We could hold a course on this for 3 days, how you can like really just like fantasize and imagine, how you can pretend, and how you can guess. That was what we were doing, and we were really good at it. Right, but we can get better than that. This is another slide that I've been showing for a few years now, and it's worth showing again. There's lots of techniques for involving real, living, breathing end users. Use the techniques. And if you don't have designers, do it yourself. If you have access to designers, let the designers do it, because this really is what they've learned how to do and what they have the toolbox for. So here we have a little bit of a cool little graph that shows some of these techniques. We can do both qualitative and quantitative analysis. Quantitative means that we're working with numbers. So you can measure things. For example, you can, if we're talking about activity, you can measure the number of transactions. You can measure the number of transactions without having transactions with customer support, for example. That's measuring activity. Qualitatively, you can go and you look at the end users while they're working. So that's more of a qualitative analysis. If we're talking about experience, of course, you can measure experience to a certain level by doing a survey, or you can do a more deep analysis through interviews. So I'm going to throw some of those techniques on that I've just talked about. These are the techniques that designers have in their toolbox that they're really, really good at. And this shows you the mix of techniques that are used to really gain end user empathy. What I don't see on this map are guessing, imagining, and pretending. Designers don't do that. Right, let's move on. Let's say that you don't have access to a designer. We don't all have access to designers. And Chris was just talking about something. If I look at the lower right corner here, for example, deep interviews to really get that empathy with the end user. Through empathy, we gain insight. Okay, deep interviews is what we could also call a part of qualitative research or qualitative interviews. If you don't have access to a designer, maybe we need to do these interviews ourselves. And it's better that we do it ourselves than that they don't happen at all. If you're talking to end users, you might want to ask the same set of questions to a number of different end users to reach some conclusions. As you're doing that, why not try some trigger material? This is an exercise from one of our courses where we work with booking a ticket for a train trip. And when we do this exercise, we practice doing these qualitative interviews. We do the same set of questions, but with different trigger material. So in this trigger material, the user that we're interviewing is looking at before, during, and after the train trip. And there's a certain information we get with this trigger material. We can ask the same set of questions to another user or the same user with this trigger material. So we're actually zooming in a little bit on the actual train travel, and we might gain other types of insights using that trigger material. So that's just a little technique from the designer's toolbox that we should be stealing so that we can pretend like we're designers. Right, this is the next quote. Jonas, are we gonna go with you or is there somebody else? Do you think? Is there anybody eager to talk out there? I think we'll go with you on this one, Jonas. Show me the qualitative research.
Show me the qualitative research.
Yeah, right on. That's our question number 2. Moving into prototyping mindset. You may have heard of this before. You may have heard of design thinking. What you might not know is a lot of how we're working today is actually influenced by the design community. You may have seen the sometimes it's referred to as the Spotify model, which illustrates the minimum viable product. And I'm sorry, I don't have the reference there. What's his name? Henry Knieberry, something like that. That's the reference. And in the middle, you may have seen something like this. And here we're kind of moving into, I don't know, DevOps continuous deployment at least, or at least often deployment. But we're also thinking of the minimum viable product at the same time. These are the types of models that we're looking at today within Agile and have been looking at over the last few years within Agile development. It comes partially from design thinking from the beginning. And a very central part of design thinking, there are a number of different models out there, is actually like prototyping. And with prototyping, I want to talk about the first shitty draft. What's the first shitty draft? Let's say that you want to make a picture of a tree, for example, and you're really not sure how to start, and you kind of have this like mind block, or if you're writing something, you have writer's cramp. Just get it out there. Just do something. So here's our first shitty draft of a tree. And we realized quite quickly that, okay, maybe this is not quite the placement and focus we were thinking of, but at least we have something to work with and move forward with. So don't be afraid to get the first shitty draft out there. You can be thankful that I applied first shitty draft concept to this talk. And I think you can also be thankful that you're not getting my first shitty draft. You're getting the second or third one. So first shitty draft, what we do with the first shitty draft is we are separating creation from critique. We don't need to be afraid of critique. It is a shitty draft, but it's part of the creation process, and we just need to get it out there. Once you get something out there that's tangible, then we can react to it, we can make it better. So I'm sure you've heard about prototyping before, but if you haven't heard of the first shitty draft, it's a nice little packaging that I want you to take. Right, so Jonas, we're gonna stick with you. Show me the prototype. Let me touch it. Let me break it.
Show me the prototype, Chris.
Continue.
Let me touch it. Let me break it.
Right, okay. So these are the set of questions that you as testers can take with you into the next assignment. Double diamond is something we've talked about before. A few years ago, we had a whole talk about the double diamond. I'm sure not everybody has seen that talk, and not everybody has seen the double diamond before. If you're not a designer, if you're a designer, you're probably like puking at this point, because like the double diamond is like so like bonehead that we don't talk about it. I'm exaggerating a little bit. Even designers are proud to lift up the double diamond. What is the double diamond? There are a lot of different models, and we could really get into the details of it. But number one, we distinguish between the problem and the solution. And we do this very clearly with the model. There's 4 different phases in the model as well, which are very closely related to design thinking at the bottom there. But what I also want to show here is that in the double diamond, the shape of the double diamond allows us to communicate the concept of diverge. In the beginning, we have like shitty stuff and we have lots of ideas, and it could be quite stressful. But in the beginning, that's okay, because we're diverging. There's a time and place for everything, and soon we also get to converge, and that's built into the model. So we diverge, we converge, both with the problem and with the solution. So take the double diamond if you haven't already started using it as a thinking model. All right, Jonas, it's not getting any easier here. I'll give it a go, and then you can give it a go. This actually comes from a song, so if you know the song, you can sing it. I'm not going to sing it, but to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. Right now is the time for diverging. Give it a try.
To everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. Right now it's the time for diverging or something.
Yeah, very, very good. Oh yeah, this feels good. All right. We actually, I was thinking if we had time, we would talk about one or two tools. And I think we do have time. Is that right, Jonas?
Actually, we don't have that much time. The next speaker is up for 5 minutes.
Okay. How about this? We do one quick tool in 1 minute and I'm done.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. I'm going to jump over to that tool. Let's see. The tool, you may have heard about, I go back to the material. I can just show you quickly. You may have heard about Balsamiq and other tools for like doing prototypes. This is a very low fidelity prototype. I wanted to show a new tool that has taken the design world by storm, but it's also available to all of us. It's a very easy tool to get going with, but it's also a very strong tool for doing more high fidelity prototypes. This is a prototype in Figma. I'm going to take it up into a demonstration mode. Of course, it's clickable. And we'll eat up some of our seconds there. So I have a clickable prototype here. I can log in, I can register. I'm looking at login. I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at register. There. Yeah, okay, I'm good with that information. I'll do a sign up. Okay, I'm in. Maybe I want to do some searching, etc., etc. So yeah, we'll close off this session with one last quote. Jonas, the quote is this. What? You haven't heard of Figma? Let me show you.
What? You haven't heard of Figma? Let me show you.
All right. And with that, I want to thank everybody for spending the first 45 minutes of this day with us around this topic of design and how design and quality are coming together and how we really can work hand in hand. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chris. This was really interesting. Great to hear. We have time for one short question, I think. Anyone would like to speak up and shout out the question?
Now's your chance.
No, everyone is heading to another room or getting coffee for the next speaker.
Yeah. I see we've got 100 people, looks like, still in this meeting. 100 quiet people.
Yeah, and if you join the chat, Chris, you see a lot of shares and
all right.
Brilliant presentation.
I'll go ahead and pull up the chat now.
Yeah, so thank you very much. And,
yeah.
And vi tack så mycket, Chris. Så tar vi
thanks to SAST. Thank you, Jonas, and thanks for playing along.
It was just fun.
Yeah.
Så om 4 minuter så har vi nästa presentation på den här länken för er som vill stanna kvar eller som redan har kommit in för den. Och då kommer det vara Anders Barno och Lars Johansson Källerö som kommer att prata. Men det är om 4 minuter. Vi syns om 4 minuter igen.
Jonas, I don't expect you to like really be my own technical expert and understand how to fix my thing here, but I can't find the chat.